So when you're talking to a younger woman, how do you go from friendly older guy she's talking to tapping into the deeper fantasy she has of an attractive older man? In this video, I'm going to teach you 3 questions that trigger this older man fantasy and turn you into the prize that she's going to chase. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and to really understand why these questions are so powerful, you have to first understand what her fantasy is and what traits make an older man attractive to a younger woman. So let's get something out of the way really fast because I know I'm going to get a flood of comments below. It is not money. If you think it's money, it's because you think that's all you have to offer a woman. Because as I'll explain, there are certain qualities that older guys have that make being with you a fantasy of younger women. So first, what are the qualities? Because to understand what makes the questions I'm going to teach you so effective, you have to understand the underlying qualities that you're projecting through these questions, which trigger that fantasy in her, because she's responding to the quality that taps into the fantasy more than she's responding to the actual question. The question just triggers that fantasy because it attaches you to a trait. So your masculinity. Older guys have a raw masculinity that younger guys don't have yet. I remember even when I was a little kid, right? And I had my grandfather, he was like 5'2", and I was scared of him because he just had this sort of dominant older guy strength to him. And women crave that, especially nowadays, because society has been really in a lot of ways neutering masculinity out of men. And in today's culture, women are very often forced into that masculine role. You know, they're the boss at work a lot of times. They're taking care of their family. They're the provider in a lot of instances. So they actually crave that ability to let go around this very masculine man. Now, the reason masculinity is so attractive to younger women, though, is because she can now feel comfortable in that feminine role. Too many guys her own age force her into the masculine role. Again, this is partly because society and the push for equal rights has made a lot of guys take the back seat and let women take control of the wheel. Also, unfortunately for men, there's sort of a crisis of men. A lot of guys growing up now are sitting inside playing video games. They don't really know how to socialize. So women very often are the ones having to kind of be the leader, and they don't want that. They don't want to be the one in control. It gets exhausting having to play the role of a man. So the fantasy is of letting go of control, of being with an older man who can protect her, she can submit to a little bit, and she doesn't have to teach to be a man like she does a lot of the guys her own age. And that's a very intoxicating desire for her. It's important to remember, us men, we are largely turned on visually. And this is why a lot of older guys, until they get out there and they see that it's actually way easier than they thought, but they initially struggle because we're attracted to women visually. And this is why we're more attracted to younger women, because visually younger women are more appealing in a lot of cases. Not all, as there's plenty of sexy older women, but in general, men find younger women better looking. There's also evolutionary reasons for this, because of fertility and all that stuff. But all you really need to understand is that women are largely turned on mentally, not visually, right? Women don't watch porn to get turned on. They get turned on by the story they tell themselves about what's happening, about the fantasy, about the buildup, the taboo nature of it. So your age isn't the turnoff you might think it is. In fact, it's actually an advantage when you know how to use it. So that masculinity is the first quality. The second quality that's part of a younger woman's fantasy is your maturity. So what do I mean by maturity? I mean, she won't need to fix you. She won't need to validate you. She won't need to guide you. Again, she can relax and just go along with it. And if you understand women, you understand that they largely want to be swept away in the moment. They want to feel like something just came over me. I don't know what it was. I know he's older, but something just pulled me towards him, right? They want that feeling. And being around a man that she sees as masculine, a man she sees as mature, gives her brain permission to let go. Your experience and your wisdom are part of the fantasy too. So what else is part of the fantasy? What is the traits? Experience. Your experience and your wisdom are part of the fantasy too, right? You've experienced things, you know things, you've lived a life in a way that she hasn't yet. Now, here's how that's going to play into the questions. Part of her older guy fantasy is proving herself to that mature, masculine, experienced man. The reason this is important because now she gets the satisfaction of being validated by a man who has a lot to compare her to. This is important to remember when we go through the 3 questions in a minute. Now, the other trait that really taps into this older guy fantasy is your autonomy. So autonomy, what does autonomy mean? It means you won't orbit around her. You won't expect her to bring completion to your life. You've got a life, you've got purpose, you've got hobbies, you've got goals, you've got a career that has been built without her approval, which means that she can step into your reality rather than you chasing her reality. Now, it's important to understand these qualities because knowing them prevents you from making the mistakes that ruin this fantasy, right? Because think about it, if your masculinity is part of the fantasy, then forcing her to lead or seeking her permission or craving her approval, what is that gonna do? It's gonna kill the fantasy for her, right? Which means that you have to be leading her and you have to be doing it without constantly waiting for her to give you the green light. I see too many clients when I work with a guy and he's like, I went out with this younger woman and it was going great, but at the end of the night, I couldn't tell how it was going, so I didn't try to kiss her. And then the next date, they do the same thing, and then they wind up in the mentor zone or the friend zone. And it's like, no, you can't wait for the green light. You're the man, you're the mature, experienced, autonomous man. If you're on a date and she says, where should we go next? And you say, I don't know, what do you feel like doing? You're ruining the fantasy, right? Instead, you gotta smile and say, I know a spot, let's go. That's masculine, that's leadership, that's what allows her to relax into that fantasy. But then you get to the next spot and now there's a moment, right? And she's looking at you and she's leaning in, and instead of closing the distance and holding eye contact and maybe even kissing her, you either nervously look away, hoping that she initiates, or you like awkwardly like, oh, I'd like to kiss you, is that okay? And just like that, boom, you've killed attention and you've made her the decider. You went from being the man that she wanted to relax around, to follow, to the boy asking for permission, right? You don't want to make her responsible for the moment. And if you do make her responsible, the fantasy, again, it evaporates. You also realize when you know these traits that when you try and enter her world and her reality, it's ruining the fantasy. I've had older clients who are so enamored with a younger woman that they completely adjust themselves to fit into her world. Whether it's adjusting themselves to like text message like her, right? Using the emojis she uses, or getting interested in like the things she likes, the music she likes, trying to dress younger, trying to go to the places she likes to go to. You're basically, in doing that, seeking her approval, which again destroys her older man fantasy. It's very much the same when it comes down to treating her like the prize. If you look at it from the perspective of who's living out whose fantasy, well, then you have to take the position that you're the prize, because the moment you make her the prize, you flip the dynamic. She's no longer swept into your world. She's put up on a pedestal and she's forced to lead the story. And a woman can't lose herself in a fantasy when she's the one writing it, right? When she's directing it and scripting it out, right? Part of that older man fantasy is being led into this new world. In her fantasy, you're the prize, right? You're the challenge. You're the guy she's working to impress herself to. If you think about the typical guys, right? The professor that the younger woman gets a crush on. What is she doing? She's trying to impress him. That's the role that she's playing in this fantasy, and that's what these questions tap into. That fantasy of impressing you, of working to live up to your standards. So if you put her up on a pedestal and she can sense that you're adjusting your behavior to fit her expectations, you're explaining yourself, you're acting uncertain, you're seeking permission, you're seeking her approval, she goes, wait, I'm the prize, I have all the power. And that's not part of her fantasy, right? Not even with a younger man, but especially with an older man. So knowing a little bit about these qualities and these traits that make up the fantasy, let's go over some of the questions that trigger this fantasy in her, all right? So question number 1, a lot of guys think that they can't let a woman know they find her attractive or they lose all their power. But that's really not true. Your power is in the fact that yes, you do find her attractive, but so what? A lot of women are attractive. A lot of younger women are very attractive, right? So it's no big deal to you. You're not fazed by her beauty. You're not fazed by her attractiveness, because part of that is your appeal, right? You want her thinking, wait, why is this guy acting like he's the prize? Why isn't he relinquishing control? Why doesn't he seem impressed? Why am I so worried about impressing him now? So question number 1, I call the beauty disqualifier. So here's what I mean. A lot of guys think that They can't let a woman know that they find her attractive, or they're gonna lose all their power, right? If she knows I find her physically attractive, well, now she's gonna not want me, right? But that's not true. Your power is in the fact that yes, you do find her physically attractive, but so what? A lot of women are physically attractive. A lot of women are younger. A lot of women are sexy. It's no big deal to you. You're not fazed by it because part of that is your appeal. You want her thinking, wait, why is he acting like he's the prize? Why isn't he relinquishing control like the other men do? Why doesn't he seem impressed? Why am I so worried about impressing him now? So you want to acknowledge her attractiveness without flinching in a sort of playfully dismissive way. And you can do it in a lot of ways. It starts with dismissing the attraction, right? Like, you got a very dangerous smile. I'm sure you're very used to getting your way, right? You just acknowledged she's got attractiveness, she's used to getting her way. But, and here's the key thing, then instead of lingering on it, you smoothly pivot to a question like, so tell me, if I were like a fly on your wall for a day, what's one thing I'd be surprised to find out about you? Now, the reason I call this the beauty disqualifying question is because you're acknowledging her looks, but then disqualifying them as the reason to keep your interest. It's like attraction's a given, right? Yes, you're attractive, but what else makes you interesting? That's what you're projecting. So here's another example of the beauty disqualifier question. I can see why guys probably fall all over themselves around you, then pivot. But I'm curious, how do you act when you're actually into someone? You're clearly not hurting for attention, right? You're acknowledging she's attractive, right? But when was the last time someone challenged you? Each one sends the same message. Yes, I noticed. No, I'm not impressed yet, right? Yet. I noticed you're attractive. I'm not an idiot. But I'm not impressed yet. Right? So now the follow-up question is, you're not specifically saying what else is there, you're asking a question that sends that message. And that's exactly what keeps you in the lead role of her fantasy. All right, so the next question I call the standard setting question. So the standard setting question, it's a question that communicates, I have standards, I don't choose women based on looks. I'm screening for something deeper. But you're not saying it outright. Just like the beauty disqualifier, you're not outright saying this. You're asking something that implies it. So one of my standards for women personally is intellectual curiosity. Okay, the standard setting question. The standard setting question is a question that communicates, I have standards, right? I don't just choose women based on looks. I'm screening for something deeper. But you're not saying it outright, similar to the previous one. You're asking something that implies it. So I'll give you an example. One of my standards for women is intellectual curiosity. I want a woman who's into learning new things, reading, discussing ideas. So I might ask, what's the most interesting book or podcast you've come across lately? This question implies you're attracted to women who are curious and who value learning. It sets a silent standard, I don't do small minds. Or if independence is a standard or a value that you hold, you might ask, so if your friends were all busy for a weekend, what would you do on your own, right? It communicates you're into women who have their own life and don't rely on constant attention. You know, what's something you've done in the last year you're proud of? These questions create a quiet challenge. You're not trying to impress her, you're giving her a chance to impress you. And that flips the dynamic, and that's how you stay the prize. Now, what's also good about a question like this, right, is it's also a temperature check, meaning if you ask a woman, so what's the thing you're most proud of in the last year, and she gives you a crappy answer, say, I haven't done anything interesting in the last year, or nothing. That means she's not invested. It means that she's not interested yet, because if she was, right, she would be working to impress you. So you can kind of judge how much effort she puts into one of these answers to where you currently are temperature-wise. So here's one of my favorites because it accomplishes two things, right? This question. Be honest, are you the kind of girl who secretly loves taking care of her man, or are you more of a handle-it-yourself type? You're screening for feminine energy and nurturing qualities, okay? Because again, for me, I personally like women that like being in the feminine role. So a question like that tells her that that's what you like. But it also subtly implies that you're a man who expects to be taken care of. And this leads into the next question, which I call the feminine frame question. So the purpose of this next question is to create a moment where she naturally steps into her feminine side, and you notice it, and then you subtly reward her for it, which deepens the chemistry and builds trust in your ability to lead her from a masculine place. An example is maybe you wait until she mentioned a situation where she had to handle something, maybe a work project or she helped her family somehow, and you ask, that's cool, but when you actually let someone else take the lead, what does that version of you look like? And you say it with a smirk, like you're playfully teasing out a side of her that she doesn't show everyone. And it teases her in a way that implies that, yeah, she's usually in control, but you're the kind of guy who could take the reins. And it invites her to describe her softer side, her more relaxed side in her words. And you framed that side of her as intriguing and worth discovering. And now she's emotionally drawn to show you that part. Now, this also plays into something I call the golden mirror, where a woman wants to be validated for her femininity. No matter how type A she is, no matter how, whatever you think she is, all women deep down inside want to be valued for their femininity. They want to be appreciated for that. So when you get her showing you that side, you can now compliment that and appreciate that, which is very rewarding for her. Now, assuming that she gives you a halfway decent answer, you validate her with, yeah, I had a feeling there was a side of you like that that doesn't always have to run the show, right? And you say it playfully, as if you're seeing something that she's used to hiding. So here's another version of the feminine frame question that sets you up to lead her into an experience and has her excited and feeling safe about giving up control. Now again, these questions should flow in a conversation, okay? Meaning you're not just gonna randomly, like out of nowhere, say them. So what you're doing is you're waiting for her to say something that makes this come off naturally. So maybe if she just told you how she was planning her friend's party or whatever, then it wouldn't be appropriate. Then you can say, well, if I told you that I'm planning something and all you had to do was show up and trust me, would that excite you or would that make you nervous? And you say it again, playfully, like you already know the answer. Again, this positions you as the kind of man who takes the lead. And it also gauges how open she is to letting go. It also creates anticipation because now she starts imagining you planning something. Now, if she says that it will excite her, well, then you grin and you say something like, good, that tells me you know how to enjoy yourself when you're with the right kind of man. So afterwards, you would pivot just to kind of be playful. And you might say something like, just don't ask too many questions when I tell you what to wear. Okay, the next question is called again, as an older man, part of your attractiveness is your experience, your maturity. So this question does a really good job of building authority, of showing your experience. It's called the authority cold read. And again, it's all about showing authority over her world without being overbearing. So it should feel like a cold read, a confident statement disguised as a question that subtly suggests, I see who you really are, and I'm a man who could guide you. So here's how you'd craft it. So then you could respond with something like, good, then maybe what you need is someone who doesn't add to the chaos, but tells you what time to be ready and takes care of the rest. Now you're the calm in her storm. You stepped into her world, but you've taken the wheel away from her. If you think, how do I come up with these authority cold reads? Like I said, the reason you know these are gonna work and the reason they're easy to come up with is you're really just using truisms. Truisms are observations that are true for a lot of people, especially women, especially in dating, especially when they're used to being misunderstood, right? They don't need to be specific, they just need to feel real. Here's a few of them. Here's a few truisms that you can build these cold read questions from. You're usually the one holding everything together. She's the responsible one, but she secretly craves letting go. We all have that side of ourselves, right? A truism means like, it sounds right because we all have that part of ourselves, right? You might say something like, you attract a lot of attention, but very few people actually get you. She's seen for her looks, not for her mind, is what you're kind of saying. But again, we all kind of feel like nobody gets us. You might say something like, you have a soft side, but you had to learn to hide it. She's been hurt before and now she guards her vulnerability. Most people have a soft side that they try to hide. So again, truisms. You might say you overthink everything, even when you know you shouldn't. You're smart, but you're stuck in your own head, right? These are the things you're saying. You're the type who keeps people guessing until somebody finally calls your bluff. She plays games, but wants someone who sees through them. That's what you're suggesting. So you start with these truisms and you phrase it as a confident guess. Let me guess. Or you strike me as the type who, or you give off this vibe like, and then you follow it with the truism. And again, they work because when you speak a truth about her without her giving you anything, it creates the illusion of a deep understanding. And a sort of psychological authority, and she relaxes into your lead because it feels like you get her more than most people do. And because you're older than her, she assumes it's that maturity. She assumes it's that worldliness, that experience. And all of this taps into her fantasy of being with that experienced older man. Each of these questions, they're not random, right? They're deliberate tools that activate her older man fantasy at a deep emotional level. So again, you acknowledge her beauty without flinching, right? You use your beauty as the disqualifier, reminding her that you're not another guy begging for her attention. You set the tone with a standard setting question, which quietly signals, if you want me, you'll have to meet me at a higher bar. You invite her to step into her feminine with questions that give her permission to let go, something that she craves in a man but rarely gets. And then you use the authority cold reads, where you demonstrate emotional leadership, that you've seen women like her before, you understand her, you have authority over her world. And more importantly, you know exactly how to handle her, right? She gets to relax, she gets to take her hand off the wheel. And you put these together, right? You put these together and you make her feel something no younger guy has ever made her feel. You make her feel safe to surrender, excited to impress you, and completely drawn into your world, which is a little bit taboo, right? If you're older than her, and again, I mentioned the word taboo earlier, because you gotta remember this is all about tapping into her fantasy, and that taboo nature of it is part of the fantasy. It's that mental foreplay that turns women on. That's the power of it, right? When you lead her there, she doesn't want to leave it. So now my friend Hank and I, we have an entire class about this, and we show you how to play into this younger woman's fantasy so that she's continually chasing you. Now, the class is free. It's called How to Turn Your Age into the Ultimate Advantage with Women. And we show you how to position yourself as the prize so that a younger woman chases your approval. I gave you a few questions that you can use here. But in the class, we go way more in depth, and we cover the other ways to do it, how, other ways to trigger this fantasy. We also cover the common tests that she's gonna give you, and a younger woman is gonna test you. We're gonna show you how to recognize these tests, because passing them is critical. She might make a comment about your age. She might challenge you on something, and we'll show you how to handle them in a way that keeps the fantasy alive instead of killing it, because most guys kill the fantasy. If a woman says, you're too old for me, and you start explaining yourself, or you get nervous, or you get, oh, but I look young, or any of that, like that's killing the fantasy. So we show you how to keep the fantasy alive by passing these tests. We show you the best places to meet younger women, places where you naturally hold the power. We cover the big mistakes that we see older guys make and how to avoid a lot of them. A lot of guys are completely unaware that they're making their mistakes. They don't even know that they are mistakes. Older guys have a huge advantage in the dating scene when you know how to trigger this fantasy in a younger woman. But too many guys get out of a long-term relationship and they're just really not aware of this. And maybe eventually they find it out, but this is sort of a shortcut for you. Now for this class, we do it a few times a week. It's completely free, and you can actually choose a time that works best for you. There's a link in the description below where you can register. Again, free. You're gonna learn a lot. We went over some questions here that trigger the fantasy. Start testing these out, because when you see the reaction you get, you're gonna realize, oh, this is not as difficult as I thought it was. And again, if you want to go even deeper, click the link, register for the class, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see me cover in the next video. And also, if you like it, hit like, subscribe to the channel.